Perfectly Knotty to class on tension, take 3. Hey, just so you know, that's way more fun than, you know. So we've all made things and we can get to the end or get to a certain place in the middle when we realize that our tension is off. Our stitch count might be right, but why is this? The edges are crazy. So it feels really tight or stiff, or why is it all loose and floppy? And it's usually your tension. And tension is one of those things that separates your wobbly, floppy, or super rigid, tight fabric from something that looks professional and beautiful and makes your heart just happy. A lot of stitchers will blame the yarn, they'll blame the pattern, and really all it is for the most part are just some simple mechanical habits that we can fix. I'm Suzi Quillen. I am your stitching coach and the Empress of Yarn here at Perfectly Knotty, and I am here to help determined stitchers like you make heirloom quality things by providing you with clear and practical information. And today we are talking about tension. And I have some notes over here. So I'm going to kind of be going back and forth because we want to make sure that we cover all the points. And I want you to get out of this what you need. So inconsistency in our stitches can look like a fabric that has stitches that are really tight together and are really rigid, and you can feel it when you go to put your knitting needle or your crochet hook into the stitch to make the next stitch, and it's tight and you feel like you're fighting it, and you might think that it's the yarn, and you might think that it's the knitting needle or the crochet hook. And sometimes it is. And that's absolutely true. And that's one of the things that we definitely need to know and understand. And sometimes it's our own ergonomics and tension. And it can make your stitches really open and loose and where you can see between them when you probably shouldn't. And we're going to talk about how to identify those things and how to make adjustments and how to be aware of how you make fabric. So that way you are choosing, you are empowered to make choices in how you make your fabrics. So let's talk about a few things here. I have down here, I have some knitting needles and crochet hooks. I have plastic, metal, wood, another kind of metal. I have these wooden crochet hooks that are hand carved, and you'll see that they have a really tall head on them. These are my very favorite boy crochet hooks. There's lots of different types and styles. There is no one that is right or wrong. There's no knitting needle that's right or wrong. There's no crochet hook that's right or wrong. What it has to do with is how does your movement, the way that you hold it, the way that you use the tool, interact with the yarn, and then learning how to look at your fabric and be able to diagnose, how did I get this like this? Do I like it like that? Great, repeat it. Do I not like that? Okay, fine. Let's try it again and adjust something. The shape of your hook head can make a huge difference. Some people have a tendency to feel like the yarn is splitting, and while technically the yarn is splitting, sometimes it's because of our crochet hook. The style of hook is grabbing the fibers in a way that's causing it to split. So even the material, your wood and plastic hooks tend to have more grip. So if a yarn is grippy and your hook or needles are grippy, these wood needles are going to be much grippier than these metal needles. You might be fighting with your work more, and that's going to cause more tension. That's going to cause tension in your hands, in the way that you're working, and in your shoulders and your elbow as you're pushing and forcing your way in, which is going to potentially cause distortion in your fabric. So this is why we have an upcoming class on swatching and why I want to help you change your mindset about swatching. So we're going to move these out of the way. Let's get this one here. Move this out of the way. Really, what we're looking at here in this session on tension is learning to recognize your consistency in making stitches. Looking at the way that you make your stitches and understanding the mechanics that are happening in the way that you do it. And again, I want to reiterate over and over, there's not necessarily a right or wrong way. There is just a result in a fabric. And when you understand the mechanics of how your fabric got created by your mechanics, then you have the power to adjust what we're doing. You are a human being, you are a robot, and our tension changes with our frustration or our relaxation, if we're distracted or if we're really focused. And all of that is good and right and normal. And we want to embrace it. But in that embracing, we need to understand it so that we are in choice. And we're not just simply creating fabric out of a mechanical, muscle memory sort of behavior. So let's talk about the tension that we create with our hooks and needles and our yarn and our hands. I'm going to start over here with this crochet piece. This actually is pretty consistent. I was a little loose right through here in the bottom a little bit, but for a swatch, that is just fine. Here are some things that I notice for my crocheters. For people who have a tendency to find that their fabric is loose and has a lot of movement to it, maybe there's gapping in between your stitches, or maybe you're getting your gauge, you're getting your stitch width, but you're not getting your stitch height. This often comes from the very first loop that you pull up in your stitch. And that loop is called your golden loop. So what that is, it's this very first loop right here. In this case, it's a single crochet. And I want you to notice that right now my hook, I'm holding it pretty parallel to the top of the fabric. And when I pull this up, we're sizing these loops up here on this part of the crochet hook. We're not sizing those loops down here where the hook is tapered. And that's going to help create a consistent loop right here. There are times when you want that to be more loose and where you might bring your hook at an angle to your fabric so that the hook head is higher and the handle is lower. And then conversely, if you're trying to create a tighter fabric, you might need to bring that much tighter so that the hook head is down and the handle is up. This all has to do with the outcome of the fabric that you're trying to create, but understanding where you are and how you make those stitches allows you to work from a place of understanding and choice and not merely from mechanical muscle memory. And that is point on our crocheting, on our knitting. Let me untangle that a little bit there. Boop, doo, doo. All right, here we go. For our knitting, wait. There's a couple of things that are happening with knitting. when I knit where I'm throwing, my needles, when I insert the right hand needle into the stitch, I am perpendicular and the needles are touching each other. I wrap the yarn around and it sort of pops between the left needle and the right needle. I slide this down and I'm pushing that down with this left finger, pushing it through. The tip of that needle is staying in contact with the knitting needle the whole time. And then when I come back up, because we want to size that loop on the barrel of the knitting needle, much like we do on our crochet hook. Now I'm going to take this finger and I'm going to slide that off. That is how I would make this stitch if I was doing the throwing technique. If I was picking, something very different happens. And this is what I want you to see and understand. I go into my stitch, but instead of being at a 90-degree angle vertically, I'm at a 90-degree angle more horizontally. Then when I scoop this, let's see if I get back into the view here. Then when I scoop this loop, I tend to have more gap between my needles. And pulling that yarn down with this finger and through, and I'm still pulling it off this way. But what happens is, and you can see it here, it makes my stitches looser. So when I need my knitting to be tight, or I notice that my gauge, my gauge isn't quite where I want it to be, this very much impacts my stitch width. You need to understand that for you. What are you doing that is causing your stitch height or width to be adjusted? Again, it's not right or wrong. It's about just simply understanding the how and the why. Other things that I see that cause a lot of tension and usually makes things more challenging is how we're holding our yarn. I see this with my crocheters a lot, where they are wrapping their yarn around their fingers and weaving in and out of their fingers in some kind of complicated way. And then they're pulling, and you'll see that yarn really pressing into their finger. And people will then complain that their yarn is not soft enough. And really, a lot of times what's happening is that you're pulling this yarn so tightly against your skin that it's abrading your skin and irritating your skin. You'll notice that when I am working, my yarn is here. It's only over this one. It's very loose. I don't need to pull this. We don't need to pull our yarn unless we are intentionally making something that needs to be tight. For instance, a basket or an amigurumi where we don't want the stuffing to get out. But these are little things that you can work on. I'm not quite sure where people have learned this technique with holding the yarn, where they're just lacing the yarn in and out of all of their fingers, wrapping it around multiple times. That is not necessary to get appropriate tension, and it can actually harm your yarn and your skin. So I really would like to encourage you to practice doing less of that. I used to have it wrapped around more. I wrapped it around, yeah, I used to wrap it around a lot more. It took me a long time to unlearn it. Muscle memory is really tricky. But when we use it to our advantage, when we acknowledge it for what it is and we use it to our advantage, it is a game changer. Much more so with knitting are different knitting techniques. We just talked about the difference between uh, picking and throwing or continental and European. Another technique is called Portuguese. And in Portuguese knitting, and I don't know how to do it very well, but you put the yarn around your neck and that helps to be part of your tension. And some of them actually have a little pin that goes on your shirt that helps to guide the yarn. And you're actually working in the front. And I don't, with the yarn here, and I don't really know how to do it. I don't. I'm not even demonstrating it in the truest sense because I don't know how to do it. I've just seen it and I'm like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. So there are a lot of different methods and techniques. You can adjust your tension and your gauge by understanding different techniques. In crochet, we have different ways that we might hold our hook. I have a tendency to hold mine what is called knife style. Some people hold theirs pencil style. I also sometimes will only wrap part of my hand around it. Like if this little pinky of mine is feeling a little sore, I might do it like this or like this. And when I do that, I actually get a slightly different movement. It makes me move my wrist differently. And I have to make sure that I am paying attention, that I am not making these stitches tighter than these stitches, which I have a tendency to do. But that also tells me that when I want my stitches to be tighter, I know that if I use this technique, I can make my stitches tighter on purpose. That is like those are the big things, guys. So all of that, we've talked about that effect of having a fabric that's really inconsistent. We're talking about the how to spot it in our behaviors and our movements and how to identify consistent stitches and how to identify our consistent movements, practicing different types of grips on our yarn and our tools, also practicing different ways of moving our tools. All really important and it's all, again, not right or wrong. It's just, is it getting you a fabric that's making you happy? And this is how you can practice. And here's your challenge. I want you to create something and I want you in the project to make several inches of your work. And then I want you to put in a stitch marker or a lifeline. Maybe you're knitting and you need to put in a lifeline. If you're crocheting, maybe you're putting in a removable stitch marker. And I want you on a piece of paper or in your notes app or however you best take notes. I want you to make some notes about your technique for that stitch and do something that's fairly simple for you. Don't try to make it a complex thing. A simple single crochet and a basic knit or even just garter stitch. Make notes about how you made the stitch. Were you feeling tense? Were you fighting with it? What kind of um, a hook or a needle were you using? And then put a marker. And then change one thing. Change the way you're holding something. Change maybe change to a different size or a different material. The same size tool with a different material can affect your tension and your gauge. Changing from plastic to metal, metal to wood can make a difference. And it is worth experimenting with so that you are doing that from a place of choice. That is the goal, to empower you to understand how you, as a human being, not a machine, create fabric. And I want you to have fun with that and experiment. explore all of that. So that's some just basic core knowledge on being consistent, making consistent stitches. And now that you have the know-how, what do you do? Where do you go for personal help? Well, if you're not already a member of the Stitchery Journey community, there is an invitation link for you down in the description of this video, and we would love to have you join us there. You can get personal feedback from myself and from other Stitchers in the community. We would love to have you. It's a fun environment. We're just having a great time together over there. Doing it together, talking about it, having feedback and accountability, and enjoying the process is where your skills really, truly become elevated. So click that link below and sign up and be able to have access to more free workshops like this one. Plus, in the community, there's bonus materials that go with this workshop that you can only get when you're in the community. So I'd love to see you there. Thanks for hanging out. Again, I'm Suzi Quillen. I'm your stitching coach, and I am your Empress of Yarn here at Perfectly Knotty. I'm here to help you elevate your stitching a little bit every time you pick up your hooks and needles. Thanks for joining me today.